So whether you put it in the computer or not, I mean, you're going to end up needing to do that, but it's important that you begin to write down where are you going to be in 2 months, where are you going to be in 6 months, where are you going to be in 1 year. What do you have to do to stay in business right now? What do you have to do to make some money in 6 months? What do you have to do to make enough money to be able to do business with some of these people in a year or 2 years out? So basically that's what we're going to look at. And the business plan is structured around a whole bunch of different pieces. So whether you've actually started that or not is really not even important at this time. Begin to write down your thoughts, though. That's what I really want to communicate. Because until you can clearly understand where your business is and what your objectives are, how are you going to tell somebody else? Does that make sense? You're not going to be able to tell them, okay? So you must communicate at least your own plans, your own desires with yourself, so that you can then share them with people that come onto your team or other people that you meet over the next several days, months, years, okay? Next up, do you have all of you, how many are incorporated here? Okay, any C Corps in here? We got a couple C Corps, okay, good. Most of you are S. How many LLCs? Okay, you have both. Okay, you have both. How many are sole proprietors still? Yeah, you got that. So it's important. One of the things that you'll need to know is, in order to go through the certification process, all of your documents have to be in order. Okay, so I don't care who you want to certify with. If you want to certify, if you're a woman-owned business and you'd like to get a WBE third-party certification through WeBank, for example, they are going to want to know everything about you and your corporation. And all the way back down to the first check that was used to seed the corporate account. How many have gone through that? You've got to pull up checks from years and years ago if you've been in business for a while. If you haven't and you want to get certified, find those checks right now. That's the single greatest thing you can do to save yourself a lot of time. Okay? All your corporate documents, and we're going to cover very quickly the certification process. So let's go into a couple of these others. So you've completed the steps to become a legal entity. You're in good shape there. And now the tough question is, how many of you have actually practiced? How many of you know how to do this where you present your business in 30 seconds? Good. Good. So we're going to actually do a little bit of that at the very end today if we have time. Okay, next up, we're going to take a look at the certification and the corporate creation. So most of you are in the corporate part. We've given you some warnings about documents you need to keep, documents you need to have to be able to get certified. Now, the two types of certification we're going to cover for this workshop, since this is a veteran business conference, we're going to look at the two that relate to you. And that is an SDVOSB, Service Disabled Veteran Owned Small Business. How many of you have that certification? Okay. That is what is called the Center for Veterans Enterprise. They're headquartered out of Veterans Affairs, Department of Veterans Affairs, Washington, D.C. Their job is to make sure that you are not being used. And you need to understand that. This system was previously under what they called self-certification. And so there were a lot of companies that were used and abused, if you will, where some businesses would just come in, use that certification, and get work under an SDVOSB set-aside. So we're going to cover that in a minute too, okay? So you need to understand that CVE is really out to protect you. And you're going to hear them say that. But it's because the system was abused. So now they want to make sure that you have three things, and I'd like you to write these down. These are three things that when you recertify or when you re-verify, and even when you do it on the second certification, we're going to talk about DBBE with the Department of General Services for the State of California, which is also considered to be a legal certification with CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, therefore giving you the right to do business with all the people in the room today. Okay? So they look for three things. Number one, and most importantly, does the veteran business owner, the service disabled veteran business owner, have control of their company? And that takes a shape in three different ways. So I'd like you to make three little bullets underneath here. Number one, do you preside over your board meetings and shareholder meetings? Number two, or pardon me, number one is do you call them? Number two is do you preside and run them? Number three is do you have the opportunity to avoid a veto? In other words, can you overcome a veto on your shareholders, on your board of directors? So that's a control issue, but they look specifically at shareholders, okay? Number two is the controlling interest, which deals specifically with the shareholder part. Not just the voting rights on a board of directors, but the shareholders. All of you know, for any certification, what's the magic number? 51%. You must have 51% control of that company. Okay, so that is huge and important. Anything less than that, 50-50, 50-50 with side agreements, you are ineligible. You will not be considered. Okay? Number three, and most importantly then, is who makes the day-to-day decisions? And do you have control over those decisions? In other words, not only is it operational control, but you are balanced against, say you grow a company and you've got 25 people with you now. You need to demonstrate to them to retain your service-connected certification that you are the one that ultimately controls the direction and the major decisions of that company. Does that make sense? Okay, so if anybody has questions about that later throughout the day, come up and ask me and we'll give you some help with that. Certifications are critical based on those three issues. Any other certification will fall into similar categories, by the way. So whether you're a WBE or an MBE or a DBE or a hub zone, they're all going to look at those same issues as well, okay? So anytime you want to benefit from the certification, you're going to have that. Now let's dive into the DBBE, which is a state certification, also recognized by the California Public Utilities Commission. The DBBE certification complies with all of those things that we just talked about, okay? And they are looking for the same thing. They're run out of an office up in Sacramento called the Department of General Services. They meet on the first floor. If you have problems with your DBBE certification, please talk to me. We've had some tremendous success helping our veteran companies go through that certification process. Okay, so they are there to help you. As a matter of fact, Benny, can I give a little pat on the back? Sure. So I had the privilege of personally helping Benny's company. Benny has 4 DBBE businesses. All of them had been denied DBBE certification. And now Benny has 4 DBBE certified companies. So it's important to work the system and to get the company certified. Yes, sir. Yeah, we're on.
How cautious these people are checking your licenses and stuff. I got a call going, why is Bill Osgood calling me for you? And my response was, you want me to run my businesses, and yet you want me to spend 40% of my time filling out these forms. I'm hired to do it. So, trust me, they're that cautious about the materials they're in. That's the answer you have to give us. I hired them because I want to run my companies, leave me alone.
And so now they know us, and so now they know we're representing veteran businesses. So that's a really good thing. Okay, let's move on. All right, next up is we're looking at the customer. How many of you know who your customer is? That's impressive. That's impressive. How many don't know? Okay, well, you can admit it. It's okay. You know what? One of the hardest things to do in business is to identify who your buyer is. Because you know what? You can say, well, we provide a product, good, or service that anybody can buy. Any hospital can buy. Any medical center can buy, right? That's what we've been going with. You know, but that's not true. Everyone doesn't buy from you. And so you need to identify who that customer is for your business. And it's very important. And the way to do it, and once again, if I may, the AT&T story. AT&T story, the first thing that we learned about AT&T, and fortunately I had done this, is that we read their annual plan. The only problem was my client hadn't read it. But they have now. But we read their annual plan, so we know exactly what they want. And they want exactly what we have. But you need to know what your customer is. Now, let's break it down real quick. Help me out here. Federal government, how do you find out who buys what you sell? Federal government, how do you find out who buys what you sell? Okay, so you don't know. Wow, that's it. Some of you are federal government suppliers. Do you know any? Or Laura, I'm sorry?
We hire a service, Fed Sources, which is now Deltek, which is
Okay.
a huge database that gives us hour by hour updates.
Very good. There are some services that you can use that will provide you with what they call solicitation requirements. Let me tell you something. When they hit the requirement, it's too late.
It's too-
You've missed the boat. The latest that you can get involved in the game at the federal government level is at the sources sought stage. I want you to all learn that word, sources sought. And that is about the latest you can get in. That's like an RFI going out saying, we want to know what kinds of businesses are interested in this requirement we have coming out. You need to respond. And when you respond, always request it to be an SDV, OSB set aside at the federal level. Now, let's keep going. The answer to that question was what's called the Federal Procurement Data System, FPDS. You can pull up every contract the federal government has ever issued on the FPDS. Okay? That's your key to past contract history and past awards that have been made. You can even pull up the contracts on them. And if the contracts have been archived, there's an act that the federal government has by which you can get the contract. What's that called? You know? Freedom of Information Act. You can, under the Freedom of Information Act, you can send them an email and they have to respond to it. Yes, you offer to cover the expenses of it. Please send me a bill. We'll pay for the bill. Don't ever send them money. Okay? So that's the federal system. Let's move down to the state now. How do you know where the state has requirements? And everybody's going to say, bid sync, right? No, you weren't going to say that? That's what everybody generally says. Okay, so bid sync, not good, right? So one of the things you do is you meet with the people that are here today and you ask them one critical question. This is state contracts. If the contract is under $270,000 for public works, $250,000 for goods and services, you have a very special privilege. What is that called?